Alrighty, so the next project I'm going to be working on, I had filmed a video a long time ago that I had kind of been trying to troubleshoot this thing, and it didn't really go very well, so I didn't post that. But haven't really done much with it since. Now a couple months later, so the video's just kind of old. What I like to do is I do, when I finish the mower, I then post all the videos in a sequence so that y'all can see it fixed over the course of a week or two. So I'm going to start part one here. What this is, and y'all have seen it on the channel, gosh, a few months ago now, but it is a Troy Bilt 42-inch cut 18.5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton engine. It's the Bronco trim level, so to speak, or the version of it which has the pedal operated automatic transmission. The hood is perfectly fine. I had already just taken the hood off of it to troubleshoot. I just kind of put it back on to save some space since I have a ton of stuff in the garage at this point. It has one flat tire. I had to put a tube in it. What else? So when I originally got it, he said that you would have to hold the ignition switch for about 10 seconds before it would start. I looked and I found the battery back here actually had a loose positive cable on it, and so I think that's what was causing the intermittent start issue. So that was an easy fix, but from then I learned that if you look under the battery box here, so I have the belt, all the belts and whatnot are in it, but it's missing a tension spring back here for the transaxle. And I'll show you the spring over here I have. You can see where it broke. I've got the part number and everything for it. I've just got to order one. The transaxle's good because you put it into gear and you feel it, do its little grinding type thing noise, even though you're able to roll these MTDs like that. So yeah, so that is going to be coming up at some point. I robbed the battery to put in another mower since I was working on other projects. This one has the notorious brake issue where the brake won't hold. So that's every single one of them. The 18.5 horsepower engine, the biggest thing I've got to figure out here is why the engine is so difficult to turn. You see that? Usually it's a lot easier. I think it's the valves. I thought at one time it was the crank or the compression release, but I'm going to take the valve cover off. That's the first step I'm going to do here. I do know that I'm going to have to do some carb work on it as well because it leaked all the gas into the crankcase. And I don't think it hydrolocked it, but it did leak all the gas in the crankcase, so that didn't help matters. And that is a terrible gas tank design. But I've got the gas shut off right now. And this has the bigger tank, so thankfully it's not held on by a zip tie like some of them cheap ones are. So if I need to take it out and clean it, I can actually take it out without having to fasten a zip tie to it. You can tell MTDs are not my favorite to work on by the way that I'm acting. But so I'm going to work on that next, and we're going to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drain all the oil out, and then we're going to see how the valve cover is. We're going to break open the valve cover and see how the valves look. I have a feeling that they're probably way out of whack, and hopefully that's the only thing that's wrong with it, is that the valves are out of whack. So let's get started. Alright, so I've got the valve cover off. I've also taken out the spark plug, and I'm looking at the compression release, and it looks like it wants to work. It's not working amazingly. There's the intake. There's the exhaust. You can see it after I do that. You see it try to bump. You see that right there? So it's showing me that the compression release is not completely broken on this thing. And again, this is my first time doing one of these, so I'm not 100% sure if the compression release is on its way out or if it's just valves. But they're supposed to be between, like, I think it's the exhaust is, I have it on my phone. Let me look it up for a second. That way I know exactly, and I don't want to give y'all any misinformation or anything like that. I know one of them is between 3 and 5 thousandths, and one of them is between 5 and 7 thousandths. The intake is the one that's between 3 and 5 thousandths, and the exhaust is between 5 and 7. So the exhaust is, they're all reading about 10 thousandths right now. I've got, here's a 9 thousandths feeler gauge, as y'all can see that. And I've got, let me make sure both the valves are unseated. Yes, okay. So you can see I can fit a 9 thousandths in there pretty easily. The exhaust is even a little bit more than that. It's about 11 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust these valves back to between 3 and 5 thousandths, or around 5 thousandths for both. I'm going to get the exhaust kind of on the low end as well. So let me work on that and grab the correct tools I need, and we'll see if we can get this thing to where it will actually turn over for us continuously. Hoping it does, because I really don't want to have to get into this motor, but if I do, oh well. So these valves are super touchy whenever you're trying to adjust them. All you have to do is crack this open with a 10 millimeter. If you need to tighten it, you actually turn this little torque star bit to the left a little, I mean just a small amount, and then you tighten it back up, and then that'll eventually get you to where you need to be. And if you need to go the opposite direction, then you turn it, you loosen it up, turn it in just a little bit to the right, and it'll bring the valve back out a little bit. But now, I don't know if I can show y'all here. So I got intake. Just make sure none of the valves are active whenever you do this, which means make sure none of them are, you know, being compressed or whatever. So the intake is I can fit a 3 thousandths in there. I can't fit a 5 thousandths in there. So, and the 3 thousandths has got, you know, just a marginal amount of resistance, but I can stick it right in there at that. The exhaust, let me switch hands here for you. I've got the 5 thousandths. It's supposed to be between 5 and 7. So the 5 thousandths will fit in, you know, minimal resistance. 6 thousandths is very tight. The 7 thousandths won't even fit in there. So they're right on the money in terms of valve, where they need to be in terms of valves. Like I said, they were about around 10 thousandths or so, so they were a little out of adjustment, which I know on these they're very sensitive, and I'm still curious because I don't know if you might hear a little bit of a clank whenever the exhaust valve. See, so we're at the end of the exhaust valve, and then I should see your compression release. You see that bump is kind of small. And I don't know, because I've never had to do one of these before, if that's enough to actually release the compression. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a battery in it, because I have 2 brand new batteries, and find out if we can get this cranked over. There's no oil in it, so I'm not going to crank it up. I just want to turn it over just to see if the compression release is working good enough for us to get this thing turned over, so that it's not, you know, working so hard to turn over. Want to make it right for the customer, whoever buys it, especially after I clean it up. This is the condition I got it in. Just a little bit of grass and stuff. I mean, kept it inside. There's a couple little rips in the seat. But the rest of it should clean up. It should be a very nice mower once I get it cleaned up properly. And so yeah, let me put a battery in it and we'll turn it over to see if it'll crank. Not crank, but you know, won't struggle. Alright, so with a new battery, with the way that the valves are, it is better. It is not perfect. However, once it gets over that initial hump there, it's fine. Tells me that the lobes on the crank or on the camshaft are worn. They're not worn out to the point that it is causing the compression release to not work at all. So that's an encouraging sign, because I really, really didn't want to have to open this up. But as you can see, that's a 230 cold cranking amp battery. Once you get it over that hump, cranks fine. I am fine with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the, because I've got everything. It's marginally easier to turn, but not. I mean, it's noticeably easier, but it's not the easiest in the world by any means to turn over. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and let the put the valve cover back on, let it cure with some gasket sealer, and then we're going to tackle the carburetor next. Alright, so I am at the point to put this gasket cover back on now. Y'all saw me turn it over. Y'all saw it has to get over that hump. But after it does that, it cranks over just fine. Like I said, if it gets really bad, I'll do it multiple times whenever I get this thing running. But if it's really bad, then I'll tear into the motor. I don't think I'm going to have to, which is a relief for me, because there's already a couple other things I got to do with the transaxle and stuff like that in order to get this thing going again. So let me put y'all in a good spot so that you can watch me do this. I just got some gasket sealer and stuff on it, and so I think that's gonna give y'all a look there, roughly. And I'm always a little bit on the I lather it up pretty good, as y'all can tell. Just because I don't want this thing leaking and all that good stuff. So let's see if we can do this. What I kind of like to do is thread 1 or 2 bolts in before I let the gasket start to set, because that way it's not smearing it all over the place and stuff like that. Trying to find my 10mm. Oh, it's right on top of the motor here. A little on the chilly side outside today, so I ended up closing the garage door. I don't have any heat in the garage. Never really gets that cold in here for me to get heat, because even on the coldest of winter days, I get some sunlight and stuff in here coming through the windows, and works pretty well. There we go. I'm doing the star cross pattern here with the 10mm. Seems to be working pretty well. This is the third one of these I've done, so The other two I've done like this, they have not leaked either. So I'm pretty confident about this repair, or this gasket. I use the high temp red RTV. Seems to work pretty well. I would use only the red on this on these valve covers, just because of the temperature of the oil and stuff like that. I've used it on a bunch of different mower, like push mowers for the sump gasket and whatnot too, and they have held for months on end while they've been under my care, and they have worked beautifully for the owners, because I tell them if they ever have a problem, let me know, and they never let me know. So that to me means that it's good. We're just tightening down. Remember, we're not tightening, you know, this is a lawnmower, not a car, so everything doesn't have to be at like 100 foot-pounds or whatnot. You're not tightening the lug nuts on your car or anything like that, because you're going into aluminum threads, so you want to be very careful not to strip them. I'll go ahead and put that back in as well. So I've got, you'll see, hopefully I'll caught that. The mower is on jack stands. And the reason why I did that is because there's a little bit of residual oil that was in this valve cover that I couldn't quite get all the way off with even with draining the oil. And so jacking it up a little bit, especially with the flat tire, allows the oil to kind of sink back, and it's not going to disturb the gasket here while it is setting. And so I'm going to let this sit like this for a good, at least a day. It'll be more than one day because I'm going to be away for a few days. But that's what it's done. I'm going to put a quart of oil or something over here, just to remember that I don't have any oil in it right now. And to put oil in it before I test it out, because the last thing I want to do is blow up a motor. So I think I've got just enough 10W30 over here. A lot of times I just use either 10W30 or just straight 30. I don't even use non-detergent anymore because it's almost impossible to find. I think you can find it at like $1. Dollar General, I think, still sells it, but it's about $3 a quart. And I can get this whole shebang here for about $12, so it saves me a couple bucks. Never had any issues with it smoking or blowing up or anything like that. So put the key out and lay it right there as well. That'll help me remember. So we're going to let this thing sit and cure. I'll put oil in it. And I guess the next step will be to get the carburetor and stuff off. So let me get the carburetor off. I think this episode is not terribly long yet. And get the carburetor and whatnot off, and then we're going to figure out, you know, how bad the carburetor is. I have an aftermarket carburetor I might put on it. We'll see if I need to do that. So I'll catch y'all once I get the carb over here, start working on it. I'll let you know how to get it off and all that good stuff, and we'll check the inside of it. Alright, so I've let the gasket dry over the course of what has turned out to be several days. I've just put oil in it, so we're going to monitor for leaks. Like I said, I have very good success with using that red gasket sealer to seal up valve cover gaskets. If you want to do it 100% the right way, go get your valve cover gasket from Briggs and Stratton, but y'all all know how all those leak after a certain amount of time, so I just figured that's a little bit, potentially a little bit better way to do it. Now I'm taking the carb off. I've already put another oil filter on it and changed the oil in it. The approach to start is I'm going to take this carburetor off. I'm not going to take it via the intake off, because when I used the John Deere, or when I did it on the John Deere, I ended up stretching this intake gasket, and so I'm going to try and leave the intake on it. Since the cover is really easy to get off, it's just those 4 bolts, and you don't even have to take it all the way off. Take the bolts all the way off, the cover will slide right up out of it. I've taken the fuel lines off. They are a little brittle, right, just on the ends though, so I think they'll still seal up okay. I'll see if they leak or anything like that. Tell you one thing, one tool that I have not had up until I found one on clearance at good old Walmart was these 45-degree angle pliers. I don't know why I didn't buy those earlier. I guess I was a deal bargain hunter like I always am, and I didn't want to spend the money on them, but those are well worth it to get those fuel lines and stuff off. I'm going to put a fuel filter on it as well, just to make sure that everything works like it's supposed to. These are 11 millimeters, or 7, I believe 7/16 also work. Get this off, and then I think they're 8 mils on the inside. 8 millimeter deep well get you what you need on the inside, and that gets the carburetor off. So let me get the tools. I'll set y'all down and we'll get the carburetor off. Alright, that'll do. 7/16 first. Very easy. Again, just 4 bolts. The cover gets you where you need to right here. Very easy. Yeah, I'll put that back on in just a second. There's an intake tube you have to take off of this breather as well. Toss those in the box here. I believe it's an 8 millimeter. Hopefully I am correct. Yeah. 8 mil gets you off. All you need to do is really break them loose. Something's actually already broken loose already. Inner bolts. You just wiggle the linkages out. Do the choke first because that's the easiest by far. Alright, little spring, J-bend. Get you this off. We're gonna, excuse me, put this on the bench. We're going to take a look at it, see how bad it is. I know it's leaking in the needle in the seat, so I'm pretty sure it's pretty gummed up since this was a gravity-fed system. So what I'm going to do next, actually, and I'll show you. I've already gotten the bottom nut off here, and that's for the solenoid, the backfire solenoid. So let me get the bench over here, get this little plate, and all I got to do is you can use an impact if you're careful, but just find a little Phillips or a flathead, knock those bolts loose, and I'll catch you when I get on the inside of this. So using a Phillips strips these screw heads really easily. So I took a flathead on impact, my little impact, and just knocked them off like that. These things are very sensitive. These screws are very soft for some reason. Excuse me. So I have these 2 screws off. Momentarily. Alright, now let me grab the stand for y'all and let's look inside this carburetor. Like I said, I think it's going to be pretty bad. Pretty sure the needle and seat is shot on it. It's very dusty inside. There's a lot of like dusty residue in there. Let's see if I can get this off. There we go. A lot of green dusty residue. And like I said, the needle and seat was either stuck or leaking, one of the two. I would guess that it was leaking, just for the simple fact. There's a small jet comes out there. Strip low side. Or actually it goes in right there. So you have your jet right there. Main jet was open. But then if we do this, to need some more powerful pliers, to need some pliers in general here, maybe not. Okay. I'll break this apart here. You can see that the condition of this needle, you can see where all that old gas has been trying to sit up there for a certain amount of time, and the needle is, the plastic on the needle is just kind of shot on it. Not the plastic, the rubber on the needle. The rest of the carb's plastic here. So I can do one of two things. I don't know what I'm going to do first, because I know on the other riding, or on the other carburetor, that the low side jet is drilled a little too small, and I think on this one it's actually completely clogged. I don't have a wire with me to see. But the first thing I'm going to do, and I think it's under here. Here it is. I'm going to take this carburetor, the Chinese one that I got for the John Deere, if you watched that video. I'm going to try this Chinese one on here and see, number one, if it'll run. Number two, if it'll run good enough. If not, what I might do is I might put the float and needle and seat and all that on this carburetor after I clean the top part of it out, because I don't really want to use the bottom part of this carburetor because I think the gasket and all that's bad. And just swap the top ends of it. Or if it doesn't run well, I may try to drill out the low side jet to get it to run right. Many options, many options. So I'm going to get this one on. Y'all saw me take it off, so I'll put it on off camera, and we will give this thing a shot. Alright, so I don't know if this brake will hold, but now keep in mind that I don't have the transmission linked to the drive belt at this point, so it's not going to be driving or anything. I am going to crank it up to see if it'll run, first off, and then also see, I can see if the PTO and the blades and all that work too. I ain't even checked under the deck yet to see how the blades are. But I'm going to set y'all down, and I'm going to turn this thing on and see if it'll run for us. I don't have the solenoid on. Alright, so it's got a lot of smoke to burn off, as you can tell. I mean, after the valve adjustment though, it's running pretty good. Obviously it's starving for fuel a little bit. Try the blades. Nice. Don't need a new blade belt because the belt's knock it down to the low setting and it basically turns off. So. Backfired on the carb. I gotta lube up the blades as well. That blade engage is pretty hard to turn on. If you look at the carb right there, you see how even it's running now? So it's running good with a load on it. I still got a blade turning down there. Have to check one of the blade brakes, it sounds like, too. Oh gosh, that belt's about to split. It's so bad. But hey, it works. The blade works, obviously. Obviously, I got to put a belt on it. And it's smuggling like a Dickens at the front there. But that's just something that's just got to burn off from run time and whatnot, from where I had the valve cover and stuff off. Huh. I'm tempted to go ahead and dress it up and put the air filter and stuff on it and see if it runs any better. As y'all saw, it ran pretty even with the load on it. So, you know, that's kind of what I was hoping for. It runs and the blades work, and I think Briggs and Stratton's gonna have to go in the trash, unfortunately. So it runs and the blades work. That's probably half the battle of this mower. The other half of the battle is we're gonna check the blades on it. I can go ahead and look at some of them probably. If there are any blades on it, my gosh. There they are. Yeah, they're pretty chewed up. So, some 42-inch blades will be on order for this thing. What else is going to be on order for this thing? Oh, I got to get that blade spring, or the spring for the pulley there. Before I order the blades and whatnot, I'm probably just going to order the spring just to make sure that is the only thing wrong with this. And I might go ahead and give it a wash too. A wash and a little bit of a lube of the PTO blade mechanism type deal. I'll drive it up there and wash it off, and then I'll put the hood and stuff on it. But I will end part 1 here. As you can see, the deck, as a part, aside from just having some grass and stuff caked on it, looks to be in good shape. Oh, there's a bracket right there that needs to be welded. So the deck will have to come off of this. That's not a big deal, though. You can see where they've tried to fix it a couple of times there. But, not, like I said, not that big of a deal since I have a welder now. I just skim that off and weld it. That shouldn't take me more than about 30-40 minutes. Apart from that, this deck looks to be in good shape. So the operative next is I'm going to end part 1 here. Part 2, I'll get the spring. I'll get it all washed off and all that good stuff. And we'll tackle the deck. I'm feeling this will be more than a 2-part series, but we'll tackle the deck and we'll do all this other good stuff. And I'll catch y'all then. I'm glad to be getting to work on this. It's been sitting in the garage a little while. Just sitting there waiting, ready for me to tackle it. Now that I'm tackling it, it seems to be cooperating okay. As you could tell, the compression stroke is a little strong on it. But nothing that battery can't overcome. And so I just think the cam lobes are worn. I don't think the compression release is broken, but whatever. I will open it up to what y'all think. Just let me know. So I'll catch y'all in the next video. See you then.